Hello, 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 and welcome to episode 28 of the Wool Needles Hands Knitting Podcast. My name is Taylor, and I will be your host. This is a podcast primarily about knitting, though we do get up to other fiber-related topics from time to time. I am coming to you from Henderson, Nevada, which is a small suburb outside of Las Vegas, Nevada, in the United States. This is where I am from and where I live with my husband, Brandon, our 3.5-year-old son, Angus, our 4-month-old son, Ronan, and our big fat house cat, Oscar. If you are a new subscriber or viewer of the podcast, thank you so much for stopping by the Wool Needles Hands Fiber Journey channel to check out this little corner of YouTube. And if you are a returning subscriber, as always, thank you so much for coming back time and time again to see what we have going on over here on the channel. If you would like to help support the channel, please remember to give the video a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe if you like what you see here. And then also, if you click the little bell icon next to the subscribe button, you'll be notified anytime something new gets uploaded on the channel. Your subscription, your thumbs up really helps the channel to grow. This is a one-woman production, and so everything you can do to help support this channel, if you love what you see here, means so much to me, and it really, really is greatly appreciated. If you'd like to get in touch, you can do so via email. The email address for the podcast is woolneedleshands@gmail.com. You can also get in touch via snail mail now. There is a PO address for the podcast, and you can find that in the About section of the channel. You can also find me on Instagram at Wool Needles Hands. I'm also on Ravelry at Wool Needles Hands, and there is a Ravelry group associated with the podcast. Just go to the groups tab in Ravelry, search Wool Needles Hands, a knitting podcast. You can find us over there. Don't forget to join. There is a great knit along going on right now. It's a year-long knit along, which I'll talk about in just a moment. And there's a lot of fun things to chat about over there. It's a really great growing community of people. I love so much to see all of the things that you guys are doing and creating and making. It's just a really cool place to be. I am also the hand dyer behind Fiber for the People yarn, and you can find Fiber for the People yarn on Instagram at fiber.for.the.people. You can also find the shop at fiberforthepeopleyarn.com. There is going to be a shop update this Saturday, July 21st at 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. Definitely don't forget to check out the shop update on Saturday because the first ever Fiber for the People yarn advent calendar listings will be going up. So I definitely want you guys to check that out. And then when you're there, sign up for the newsletter. You can find the newsletter by scrolling all the way down to the bottom of the page. There's a spot that says subscribe. You can type in your email address, and that will keep you notified on all of the goings on at Fiber for the People yarn. Okay, without further ado, here's a quick look at some of the yummy yarn that is coming to the shop update on Saturday, July 21st at 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. it is your first time watching the podcast or you have yet to use your Wool Needles Hands viewer coupon code, don't forget to use that code. It is WNHLOVE, and you could receive 10% off your purchase of Fiber for the People yarn. You can only use it once, so if you've already used it, then your time is up. But if you have yet to use it, definitely don't forget to do that. All right, guys, I have quite a bit of a show for you today, so let's go ahead and get started. Grab your knitting, grab your beverage, grab your crochet, whatever it is that you're doing right now. Cozy on up, and let's get started with the show. There is a knit-along going on over here at the podcast. It is the Wool Needles Hands Year of Hats Cal 2018. It is where we knit a different hat based on a different theme every month for the year of 2018. It is not necessary that you joined the knit-along back in January. If you're interested in participating and knitting some hats this year, or maybe you just want to knit one hat, that's fine. You can jump in whenever you want. There is a different finished object for every month, and each month has a different theme. The month of July was based around coming up with your own hat design, and it's so fun watching you guys talk about your design process and showing off all of your different hat patterns over on the Chatter and Finished Object thread for the month of July in the Ravelry Group. If you would like to know more about this knit-along, definitely check out the Ravelry Group. Go to the thread. At the very top of the thread are the guidelines for this knit-along. It is a sticky portion of the thread, so you can easily find it by accessing the Ravelry Group, so definitely check that out. August is going to be where we get a head start on knitting a gift hat for somebody for the holiday season. It is a gift knit, so not a selfish knit. It needs to be something for somebody else. Doesn't matter who it's for, it just has to be a gift knit, and that will be for the month of August. But right now, we are still wrapping up July, where you are designing your own hats. And hey, if you're a fast designer, or if you have a design in mind and you would like to go ahead and join for July, you still have a little bit of time, so definitely don't hesitate to do that. So let's go ahead and take a look at some of the finished objects from the July portion of the Wool Needles Hands Year of Hats Knit-Along 2018. Great. You guys, it's so much fun watching the designs that you're coming up with. Absolutely beautiful work. I love sharing these on the podcast every single chance I get. It is a pleasure to be able to share these here so that other people can see the amazing things that you guys are coming up with in the way of knit hat patterns. In the last episode of the podcast, I mentioned to you guys how I was going to be crocheting a granny square garland for my sister-in-law who was expecting a baby in November. I also asked if you guys would be interested in knitting some garlands or crocheting some garlands right along with me, and thinking maybe we could do a crochet along / knit along for just that. And you guys, I got an overwhelming response back in regards to this knit along / crochet along, and so it is a go. We will be starting in September if you would like to participate. It is a crochet / knit along. You can use whichever craft that you like, but what we're going to be doing is just crocheting or knitting garlands between now and the 1st of January, so the end of 2018 essentially. They don't have to be holiday garlands. That's not really necessarily the point, though you can absolutely most certainly make holiday garlands, and I think that would be adorable, and I'm probably going to end up doing that myself. But it's just about knitting or crocheting garlands that we will actually use in our own home decor. So you have to kind of be a little creative about how you could use this in your house, because I know a knit or crochet garland isn't very traditional home decor, but that's kind of part of the kitschiness of this whole knit along / crochet along. So that's what we're going to do. So starting September 1st, pretty much crocheting or knitting garlands. Now here's the deal, because this probably isn't going to be a project that takes a long time to complete, there will be several of you who may actually work up several garlands, and that's awesome. That's beautiful. And I'm probably going to be doing that myself as well. However, in the finished object thread, you can only feature one of those garlands. So you can choose whichever one you want for the finished object thread, but you can only enter one. But in the chatter thread, I absolutely encourage you to share all of the work that you're doing on the knit along. But the finished object thread is one submission per person. So just keep that in mind. And that's pretty much it. There aren't any further requirements. They're just pretty much that we're knitting garlands. You can knit as many as you want or crochet as many as you want, but you can only submit submit one in the finished object thread, but I definitely encourage you to submit as many as you complete in the chatter thread. And also share patterns over there. There's lots of beautiful patterns for these kinds of projects. So when you find them, share them over on the chatter thread. So we all have a place to go for finding patterns for our crocheted garlands. So definitely look for more information about that knit along / crochet along. I'm just going to call it make along. Coming in September, I'm probably going to have a thread open for that middle of August, perhaps, to give you guys more concrete details on how we're going to do it. But just go ahead and start putting together some ideas for what you want to do now. Actually, I will open up a chatter thread for this knit along right away so you guys can start putting some ideas together and sharing them with the community over there. But more solid details regarding the make along will be coming later. Okay, I just took a big sip of my iced tea that I have here, because what you don't realize is that whole opening portion of the podcast was probably filmed about 5 times. And I don't know what it is about the What You Drinking Girl segment of the podcast, but I feel like this is a moment between the opening administrative whatever section of the podcast and then the regular section of the podcast where I can take a breather for a minute. That's good. This is actually really good for me because I don't know what it was. Most of the time I never have an issue with the opening of the podcast. It's just wham bam and it's done. But this time there was something about all of the information I was sharing that it just took me 5 different times to get it right. In the meantime, I am drinking iced tea, but this is not just your regular iced tea. No. Do you remember when I mentioned cold brew tea on the last episode of the podcast and how I shared my doubt regarding whether or not that was an actual thing? Well, turns out that it is an actual thing, different from iced tea. And so that is what I'm having here, guys. This is cold brew tea. So there's not a whole lot, flavor-wise, there's not a lot different going on with cold brew tea and iced tea. But I was speaking to a few people down in the comments, and one person mentioned that when you make sun tea, though it's delicious, you're kind of creating this environment for bacteria to grow, and so it's almost better to make cold brew tea by putting a bunch of tea bags in the water, sticking it in the refrigerator the night before, letting it kind of do its thing overnight, and then having it the next day. It stays cold and you don't have to worry too much about bacteria. I'm not really too concerned about, sun tea, quite honestly. I grew up having sun tea. My mom would make it. It doesn't spook me too much, but it is nice to be able to just throw some tea bags into a big pitcher and leave it in overnight and then have some nice cold brew iced tea the next day. So that's kind of what I did. I am drinking my favorite tea. This is Orange Spice by Bigelow. And I just used 6 tea bags in not this container, it's a larger pitcher-like container, filled it with water, stuck it in the refrigerator overnight, and then through the morning to the early afternoon, which is what it is right now, and then I had tea ready to go. And so it's actually very tasty. My ice has melted because it is really warm, and also by this window, definitely warm considering we have the air conditioner going. Everything is sweating, the glass is sweating, I'm sweating, it's a sweaty day. This is definitely hitting the spot. So cold brew iced tea or cold brew tea is a thing, you guys, and I am enjoying it. So consider myself corrected. Trending right now on social media are photos of collection boxes, post office collection boxes, with little crochet and knitted monster feet. These little crocheted monster feet can be seen in California, in New York, and elsewhere around the country, and it's a new little trend in the yarn bombing community right now. So go ahead and take a look at some of the photos that are coming through social media of little knit or crochet monster feet on Postal Service collection boxes. This article was submitted by Regina and her pup Raz. Regina is at GamerMom on Ravelry and at aka Cosmic Knitter on Instagram. Thank you so much, Regina and Raz, for submitting this adorable story to the podcast. If you find a news story out there that's fiber related, definitely don't hesitate to send it to woolneedleshands@gmail.com and I will share it here on the podcast. You can choose to remain anonymous, or you can provide me with your Ravelry handle or Instagram handle and I will share your name here on the podcast. It's always a pleasure to have you guys help me curate content for the podcast, so thank you so much. Ta-da! I did it, you guys! I finished my squash blossom hat. Welcome to the finished objects section of the podcast. We haven't been here for a while, but we're here now and it's worth celebrating. I'm so excited to have this off my needles. You guys, it has been a long time coming. I started this hat back in April and I cast it on a few rows and I put it off forever, and then I complained all about it a couple episodes ago because I thought I was never going to get it done because it's a lace hat and I'm a mom and I'm busy and this and that, but I finished it and I'm so excited to be done with it. Not necessarily because I didn't like the process. It was a really nice process to work on this hat, not daunting at all, and it was a really cool hat to settle down to at the end of the night when the boys are asleep and to work on while watching TV or something. It was a great process knit, I guess you could say, but it's a better product knit. And I haven't even blocked it yet because really this is so fresh off the needles, you guys. It's crazy, but I haven't blocked it yet. I'm looking at it in the screen right now just to make sure, first of all, that I don't look like a crazy person because I just shoved it on my head just now, but also because I really think that even despite the fact that it isn't blocked, you can see the definition of the pattern. It's so beautiful. You guys, I love this so much. I'm going to take it off my head and stick it on a pie plate so I can hold it up and show you, but I wanted you guys to get the whole effect, minus the blocking, of course, to see that I finished it. I'm so excited to have it finished. This is called the Squash Blossom Hat. It's by Irina Anakiva. It's a lace pattern and I'm using 2 strands of yarn, and those 2 things are the only thing that made this hat remotely complicated, but other than that, it's really a great knit. The lace is super intuitive after you kind of get going a little bit. This is a really excellent hat to knit if you're looking for something new. Definitely if you're going to be doing the August portion of the knit along, it makes a great gift. It's absolutely beautiful. Definitely give it a shot. Check it out. It's Irina Anakiva Squash Blossom Hat. I knit this using 2 strands of yarn. I have kind of like a mohair fiber and then a fingering weight strand of Fiber for the People yarn in the Twisty Singles Luxe base. It's a 70% superwash merino, 30% silk single ply yarn. It's gorgeous. I love it so much. The color is beautiful. I'm going to take it off my head because it's causing me to burn up. I can already feel like my hair curling, and then that way I can show you guys the detail a little bit better. All right, guys, here it is. Now it doesn't fit over the pie plate all that snug, but I can use this to kind of hold it up and show you guys a little bit better. So here is the lace pattern. I'm going to stretch it so you can see. I will most likely block this over a plate, but I'm going to do it a very light blocking. I'm definitely not going to be very aggressive about it just because I don't want it to become too, too loose, I guess. It's nice right now. I like the way it fits on the head right now. I like the way it drapes. I don't want to overdo it too much. So I'm definitely going to just lightly block it over a plate for the sole purpose of just creating more definition with the lace pattern, even though it's very pretty just as it is. So there is the pattern. You can see it's kind of creating a little blossom shape going up, and I love it. And I've mentioned this before, one of my favorite things about this is the ribbing. This is a twisted rib, and it's a really beautiful feature of this pattern. I don't know how to do brioche. I've yet to teach myself brioche. I'm not even sure if I'm going to teach myself brioche, who knows. But I like that it kind of gives you a little bit of those deep ridges that you see in brioche knitting without the brioche knitting. And that is my Squash Blossom hat by Irina Anakiva. Super, super happy with this. Oh, funny story though about this. So I feel like I would have been done with this even sooner, but this is what happened. As I was knitting, I got to about, I don't know, maybe say like here on the hat, and I ran out of this fuzzy mohair-like fiber that you're seeing here. And I knew I had more of it, but this was the problem. the more that I had was wound together or caked together with a skein of Cascade 220 worsted weight yarn. And so this is what that cake looks like. So this cake was in my stash, and I'm not sure which project I had in mind, but I know I had a project in mind where I was going to be knitting that fuzzy fiber with this. Not sure what that project was, but you can see there's a fuzzy fiber kind of caked up into this cake here. And you know, when I look at it on the screen right now, I'm not a big fan of the way that looks. Like, I'm not really sure what it was that I was thinking I was going to do with this. But anyway, what is left of the fuzzy fiber that was in my hat was in this cake. And so I needed to pull from this cake the fuzzy fiber only, this mohair fiber only. And so it was a matter of me, you know, like taking these little strands and pulling them together like this, and just continuing to do that until I had pulled enough to finish the hat. And it took me a long time because I would have little tangles, and sometimes the fiber would kind of create that little ring of wool that when you're holding two strands together that's created when you have them rubbing against each other. So it kind of became a little bit of a mess, but I finally did it, and it wasn't too much of an issue at all. It only required me to unravel this much of that cake. So this is all I had to really take out of this cake and separate from the fuzzy fiber. So it really wasn't too much of a problem, but just kind of an annoying, you know, speed bump, I guess you could say. This is what's left over of the Fiber for the People yarn. This is the Twisty Singles Luxe Base that I mentioned. This is the clay colorway, a beautiful colorway. I love it so much. It's kind of a tonal, it's a Lucky Strike, and I do talk a little bit about my Lucky Strike colorways over on the shop in the About section, but they are pretty much just a conservation method. It's a way to use up every last ounce of dye stock, but they're kind of one-of-a-kind colorways. They're always one-of-a-kind colorways, and that's what this was. However, since showing my hat here on the podcast, I've had tons of people asking what colorway that is and if I'm going to have it in the shop. And because it was a Lucky Strike, I can't make promises. However, I am going to make an attempt at recreating this color because you guys look at that. It's absolutely gorgeous. And I love the way that the mohair fiber, I'm calling it a mohair fiber. It was a mystery yarn in my stash. It looks like mohair to me. Something's telling me though that there might be a little bit of acrylic in it, but that's neither here nor there. But anyway, I like the way that that kind of tones it down a little bit. But oh, you guys, the color is absolutely beautiful. And it gives the hat a nice vintage feel. It's really, really pretty. So that is my Squash Blossom hat by Irina Anakiva. It's finished. It's off the needles. And then when I get to my works in progress, I do have a new work in progress that I'm pulling into rotation. And we'll talk all about that in just a moment. But you guys, I'm so happy to have this done. Thank you to those of you who kind of contributed to my own kick in the pants that I was giving myself to kind of continue to urge me to finish it. I'm just so happy it's finished. I'm really, really, really happy it's finished. This is going to get blocked, and I will share the blocked version on Instagram, so definitely check out Instagram if you'd like to see it all blocked up, and then I'll bring it into the next episode of the podcast if I remember to share with you guys the blocked version there as well. But super excited, happy day to get this off the needles. So woohoo! Here's to pulling things off of the needles. Okay, so I only have one work in progress to share with you guys today, and then I'm going to pull in another work in progress that I'm going to begin work on now that I have finished the Squash Blossom hat. I'm not casting on new projects on a whim or just to be impulsive. I'm working on the projects that I currently have going, and so when I say that I have a new work in progress, it's a work in progress that's been sitting around on the back burner for a while that I'm bringing back into rotation now that my Squash Blossom hat is finished. So I am going to be talking about that in just a moment, but currently on my lap I have my granny stripe baby blanket that I'm working up for my sister-in-law who's expecting in November, and you guys, I'm really, gosh, I love this every time I share this. I love it so much. So I'm just going to share with you guys the progress that I have made on my blanket. Lots of new colors have gone into this, and I'm proud to say that every colorway featured in this blanket is Fiber for the People yarn. There's two reasons for that. The first being I truly and honestly love the yarn, and so I love to be able to use it whenever I get a chance, and also because this is a gift for my sister-in-law and for my new niece that is coming, I wanted it to be something extra special to be not only knit by me but also dyed by me, and so that is the reason for that. So let's go ahead and take a look at what I have finished since the last time we have spoken. Okay, here we have, this is now not the width of the blanket. I folded it up a little bit, but this will be the length that I have so far. So here is the whole enchilada of colors that are going into this blanket. I'm going to pull it so you can kind of see. So here are all the colors that are going into it. I love the cross section of this. It's so fun holding up and looking at, you know, the cross section like this, like this. Look at those beautiful colors. And this is where I was the last time we chatted. Let me pull it together. Okay, so my little Eiffel Tower marker right here, this progress keeper, is where we were last time that we chatted on the podcast. So since then, I have added quite a bit to it. So I'm really loving the colors. Now, the colors are absolutely random. The sizes of the stripes are random. However, some of them, like this green right here, I did cut the yarn down. I didn't use the entire mini because it would have been quite a big block of that green color. But otherwise, it is random. And they are all fingering weight except right here. And you can actually see there's a bulge in the side of the blanket. This portion of the blanket right here, I think is a DK weight, you guys. And I actually started knitting with it. I mean, I know it's a DK weight now, but when I started knitting with it, I was assuming that it was a fingering weight yarn. I made a magic cake with it, not thinking about it. And as I started going, I was realizing this is not, you know, a fingering weight yarn. So there's going to be a little bit of a bulge happening in the blanket right here, which I'm hoping I can sort out in blocking. I'm kind of hoping that that's something that I can fix in blocking. I am going to be putting a border on the blanket, and so I'm hoping that can kind of straighten that out as well, because you can see when I hold this up that there's a little bit of a rise in the blanket right there. But I'm not too concerned about it. But otherwise, it is all fingering weight yarn. Various bases of fingering weight yarn that I offer in the shop, but it's all fingering weight except for that one stripe of color. So let's talk about what I have added to the blanket. So this is, like I said, where we left off here. Since I have added this little stripe, this is called Lights Through the Trees. It's really pretty. A lot of variety in color in that colorway as well. This is, this is Bird of Paradise. And then right here, this little tiny strip right here, I don't have very much of it. This is As Seen from Space. Beautiful colorway, blues and earthy browns and greens. This right here, I don't remember the name of this. This was a Lucky Strike color, and I don't remember the name for the life of me, but I thought it would be a fun punch to add that there. What we have right here, this is Summer Drop Cloth. This is a gray base with beautiful multicolored speckles. Attic Treasure, a nice tobacco and purple combination variegated colorway. Seagrass is right here. This was offered in the shop just recently. It's been sold out since, but it will be coming back before summer is over. So that is Seagrass, beautiful, beautiful colorway. And then this new addition up at the very top, which I'm working on right now, is Donuts with Dad. That is a colorway I haven't brought back to the shop in quite some time, but I love it so much. It's inspired by my childhood when my dad would take us to get donuts before school, and it's supposed to kind of be reminiscent of a pastry. And this was one of my very first colorways I ever did for the shop. But I wanted it to have real toasty browns and pinks and lighter pinks, kind of like a toasty donut. But I love it. So that is what we have going on in my granny stripe blanket. And it's just such a cozy project to work on. And I don't know, I recommend that if you haven't started crocheting yet, to definitely start, even if it's only to crochet a granny stripe blanket. I started crocheting only a few months ago because I wanted to crochet a granny stripe blanket. That was the only reason I broke into crochet a couple of months ago. And I actually did start a full size or a throw Afghan size granny stripe that I'm kind of holding on the back burner right now while I work on this. But that was the only reason I taught myself how to crochet. Since doing that though, I see so many crochet projects and patterns now that I realize it's not just about that. I'm actually enjoying this fiber craft so much that I would like to, there's so many things I want to crochet, not only just the garlands that I talked about in the beginning of the show in reference to the crochet and knit along for the garlands. That's definitely something I want to do as well. I crocheted a market bag, which I love so much, which you can see on a few episodes back of the podcast. I found so many other patterns that I've posted on Pinterest that I would love to do. If you need a break from maybe the rigor of knitting sometimes, and even some of the easiest knitting projects don't compare to the ease of a crochet blanket like this. And knitting will always be my first fiber love. Absolutely always. Nothing's ever going to take its place. But it is really nice to have this as an alternative to the rhythm of knitting. And I think that it has all of the benefits that knitting does, working with your hands, having something that's very meditative. I encourage you, if you have yet to start crochet, definitely do it. Even if it means that if it's for the sake of just one project, just teach yourself how to crochet. And I highly recommend having this be the project that you use to teach yourself how to crochet. There are some really great links about learning how to do the granny stripe blanket that I will link to down in the description box below. Follow those, watch the videos. You realize how simple it is to get started, but I definitely encourage you to give it a shot because it is so worth it. Okay, so the next work in progress that I'm sharing with you guys, I have not actively been working on this. I actually just pulled it out of my little basket where I keep all of my projects that are currently not in circulation. I just pulled it out because I want to start working on it again. This is my a pair of Hermione's everyday socks, but I only have one so far. So this is my first of a pair of Hermione's everyday socks. I started these just a little under a year ago. I think what happened was that we found out we were going to be having a baby. We were taking a trip to Alaska, those two things. Then right when we got back from Alaska, we moved to a bigger house. There was so much going on. And then the first trimester of pregnancy hit, and I think I just didn't feel like knitting anything. And this is one of those things that just kind of got thrown to the wayside, and I didn't get any work done on it. But I really enjoyed the process. And so I wanted to bring these back out, knock these socks out. I just want to get them done. I have a few other socks that are on the needles right now too that I'll be bringing back into circulation as soon as I get other projects finished. But right now, this is one that I just want to get done, especially in time for the cooler weather. So this is the Hermione's Everyday Sock. I'm knitting this in Fiber for the People yarn. This is the Peach Pit colorway here. It is on my gold Stellina base. It has a beautiful gold tone stellina running through it. It's a 2-ply fingering weight yarn. And then I'm also using the Mauvin on Up colorway here. This is on my Taylor's Favorite base, 80% superwash merino, 20% nylon, and it is such a beautiful mauve. And the two of these together, it just kills, you guys. I love it so much. So I'm really excited to pull this back into circulation. If you have yet to start a Hermione's Everyday Sock, I also recommend that you try this, but definitely don't go casting it on just because I say so. Only cast it on because you really want to work on it, because I'm sure all of us need more cast-ons in our life, right? I'm just in that place right now, so you do what you want. I'm just in that place where I don't want to cast on anything. I just want to finish the stuff that I do have. Do what feels good. But I do love this pattern. I recommend this pattern. It has a really fun rhythm. The heel flap, I guess I should say, is really beautiful. It's kind of a unique heel flap. It's got this Eye of Partridge type texture going on here with a garter stitch border on this side and on this side. And this is the first pattern I've ever noticed that, where you have like a border on your heel flap. Love that. So this is going to be starting back up. I'm excited to get started on this now that my squash blossom hat is finished. I'm going to go ahead and stick this back in the little project bag, set it over by the sofa so that way tonight, when the boys have gone to sleep, I have something that I can work on. So that's all I have for works in progress right now. It's feeling really good to bring things back into circulation that have been sitting on the back burner. I feel like it's more responsible. I definitely think that in this, craft, there's a lot of potential for kind of just, not waste, we cast things on and we work on them and we get a lot of joy out of that. But I do think that we need to kind of maybe slow down a little bit sometimes and step back from all of the cast-ons and think, like, what do I already have that I need to finish? So that way I can use the yarn for something and not just have it sitting in project bags, languishing. It's not the most, economical, I guess you could say. I just think that we owe it to the yarn. We owe it to the people who produced the yarn to do it justice and put it into a project. And whether we love that project or not, if we decide we don't want to finish it, then to, rip it back and use that yarn for something else or finish the project, but don't just let it sit there and languish. And so I think that's kind of my attitude right now, is that I'm looking at all of these projects that I have sitting in project bags and just thinking like, I'm either going to work on you or I'm going to rip you out and save the yarn for something else, because it's just a waste of beautiful yarn and of a very, useful project bag to just hold a project that you don't intend on working on. So I don't know, that's kind of my thoughts about it right now, but it feels really good to be getting some of those works in progress finished. In this segment of In Our Community, I am so excited to share with you guys something really special that was done by Amanda Hinsky, who is the host of the Old Salt Knitting Podcast. Number one, if you haven't checked out her podcast, definitely do. It's a really, really great podcast. She has a beautiful personality. It's fun to watch her talk about her projects. Really, really cool show. So definitely don't forget to check out the Old Salt Knitting Podcast. But in the meantime, I want to share with you guys something that she just did for the Alzheimer's Association. Amanda chose to participate in the Alzheimer's Association's longest day fundraiser by attempting to knit a sweater in one day. Though she wasn't able to knit an entire sweater in one day, which is, that would be an incredible feat to be able to do that, she was still able to raise $1,600 for the charity, and also managed to finish the sweater in 1 week. You can learn more about this over on Amanda's blog at oldsaltcraftco.com, but in the meantime, here is some blog footage of Amanda's longest day.
I am planning on knitting a sweater in 1 day, which we'll see how that goes, but I have pretty well-laid plans. I will be knitting the Baldrick Sweater by Isabel Kramer. So right now I'm airing this in a couple locations. Some of you watching may or may not be knitters, but this is a pattern by a wonderful designer named Isabel Kramer, and this is what the sweater will look like. It's a black and white copy that I printed at home, but it's a pretty loose fitting sweater, so it doesn't need to fit absolutely perfectly, and the good news is it's on pretty big needles and using pretty big yarn, so hopefully that will make it go a little bit quicker. Okay, good morning. It is 4:55 in the morning, and so as you can see, the sun is actually starting to come up. I guess it's technically not sunrise until about 5:20, and I know most of you are, I'm sure, sleeping or certainly not watching your live social media feeds, but I just wanted to say good morning. I'm speaking very quietly because my boyfriend is still sleeping, as he should be. But I just wanted to say that I'm awake, and I'm getting ready to start my day and head over to my local yarn shop, The Perfect Blend, who is opening today at 5:20 in the morning. So if you're in the Hudson Valley area and you want to stop by on your way to work, they are doing a wonderful thing where they're going to have some projects started, and for every foot of fabric, either knit or crocheted, whatever your craft is, the Perfect Blend will donate $5 toward the Alzheimer's Association in honor of the longest day. I've actually been contacted, and I've reached out to a couple other people in hopes of getting a little more publicity for this cause, which I did want to talk a little bit about before the day got started. I was thinking this morning, the last time I did this, the longest day fundraiser, was 6 years ago, and my dad was still alive then. And I was thinking about how it felt a little more urgent then. I definitely had more of a fire in me. I hosted an event from sunrise to sunset. I rented out an area of our local park. I got insurance to do that. I had publicity. I had people doing physical activities all throughout the day. Chick-fil-A catered. It was a pretty huge event, and I think we raised, my memory might be off, but I think we raised over $5,000. And I knew I wasn't going to put that much time into it this time around, not because the cause is any less important, but just because I'm a little bit busier right now. I work for an organization where summer is our busiest season. I just knew I wouldn't be able to do that this year. And so I wanted to do something on a little bit of a smaller scale, and I decided I would lower the fundraising goal a little bit, and I have even lowered it a little bit more than I originally thought. It's now the goal is $1,500, which is about the average cost of 1 week in a nursing home. And so I'm hoping that by the end of the day I can reach that $1,500 goal between online support and as well as the perfect blend, the yarn shop that I'm going to be at all day with the fundraiser that they're so kind to do with the $5 for every foot of fabric knit or crocheted. So I'm hoping that we can reach that goal. As much as I miss my dad every single day, I'm so grateful that, my mom can go about her day and not have to worry about caring for him or, just all of us watching him decline over the years. It just took such a huge toll on him and us. And I know others who are still going through that terrible fight. And this is the first year that I feel ready to have a day in celebration and just of his life, but also of just coming together with other people who care about this cause and want to see an end to it. In the past few years, I think it would have been kind of a depressing day for me, and it would have been it would have taken too much of an emotional toll on me, and I feel ready. I feel like this is going to be a really fun day for a good cause, and I'm excited about that.
Amanda, thank you so much for submitting this to me here at the podcast to share with the viewers. What you've done for the Alzheimer's Association and raising $1,600 is amazing. To attempt to knit an entire sweater in one day is incredible. And the fact that you were able to knit it in a week is really very impressive. But I think this is such a cool cause, and I'm honored that you would share it here with the podcast. So if you have yet to check out Old Salt Knitting Podcast, definitely head over right now, check it out, and don't forget to subscribe to her channel. The local yarn shop I'm going to share with you guys today was submitted by Heather Ellis, who is at Crazy Jane Knits on Instagram. This is a Little Knitty, which is a local yarn shop in Auburn, Washington, owned by Jen, who can be found on Instagram at A Little Knitty. And she also has a podcast called A Little Knitty here on YouTube, which you definitely need to check out. But here we have a Little Knitty from Auburn, Washington. Thank you so much, Heather, for submitting this local yarn shop. And as always, if you have a really great local yarn store in your area, get some footage just like what you saw here today. You can email it to me at woolneedleshands@gmail.com, or you can transfer the files to me via WeTransfer. You just put in the email address woolneedleshands@gmail.com, upload the file, and you can send it to me that way. It's great if you have bigger files and it's free, so definitely check that out. But please participate in the local yarn store call to action here on the podcast. It's a really great way to broaden our perspective of this knitting community and to see the kind of local yarn stores that are in your area. That's all I have time for today. Thank you so much for chatting with me today. Don't forget to check out some of the other offerings here on the channel. There is a vlog series and a tips from the Dyeing Studio series. And also be sure to keep an eye out next week when I upload the vlog series where I share with you my process for coming up with the first sock set colorway for the Colorfest Sock Set Club for Fiber for the People. Don't forget to check out the shop update on Saturday, July 21st at 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. I will see you guys in 2 weeks. Thank you so much for joining me today. Happy knitting, happy whatever it is that you're doing, and until next time, bye.